Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome, live from Little Rock. It's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're listening on 96.5 FM The Answer or online at 96.5fmtheanswer.com via the live stream, or perhaps you're listening by podcast or on Krypton Radio, delayed. But regardless, so glad to have you with us as always. We've got a great show today. Remember, Shane Plays Radio is meant to be interactive, so you can always call at 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. Or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. So we're going to be talking later in the show with Gene Leggett of One More Story Games about their interactive storytelling software called StoryStylus, and they also have a very big announcement with an author they're working with. Before then, I've got my normal housekeeping notes, and we'll have a little bit of instead of a news segment today, I'm actually going to, I don't know if I'm going to rant, but I'm going to ponder on something involving role-playing games. So anyway, remember, you can call the show at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. So let's have a few housekeeping notes here. First of all, you can always find the show notes and links on shaneplays.com. That's ShanePlays.com. And as you're listening to the show, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about or my guest or whatever, you can always go there. And that's up right now. So also the show does go out as a podcast, and that'll go on the blog at shaneplays.com, on iTunes and Stitcher and other fine podcast directories. And we're also carried a week delayed on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. Before I move on, I'm gonna take a moment of personal privilege, because it is my show and I pay the bills along with my sponsors and my Patreon supporters. And I promise not to hold her too long or to embarrass her. I have my lovely wife Sheila on the phone. Sheila, are you there, baby?
I am.
Hey, honey. I just wanted to wish you a very happy anniversary. You were going to come hang out with me today, and we had a whole weekend planned, and 2 different family issues came up. So we will do it another time. But I love you very much. And
I love you.
Love you, baby. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
All right. I hear Justice there, too, our little guy. So anyway, I promised you I wouldn't embarrass you. So, I mean, you can hang on if you want, but if you want to go ahead. I just wanted to tell everyone in front of everybody, like Leonardo DiCaprio on Titanic, when he's throwing his arms out on the front of the boat. I'm on top of the world. I got the best wife out there. All right. Love you, baby.
Love you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Goodbye. So that's the lovely Sheila. I'm a lucky man. So what'd you think about that, Zach? Did that touch you right there? You're looking a little sweet in there. Did that do it for you? See, I can't embarrass Sheila. I got to embarrass you. He's just shaking his head. The able-bodied producer, Zach. All right, let's move on with the show. Don't forget the show sponsor, Troll Lord Games, does have a new Kickstarter. It's for 5th edition companions, so that every class in 5th edition can now get a companion. The link is on the show notes at shaneplays.com. And I wanted to go on, like I said, we're not going to have a news segment today because I want to take the time and kind of ponder something involving role-playing games. I did want to take a moment and mention, though, I really appreciate my sponsors, and they do help offset the cost of this show. And I really, really am blessed to have them. I also have some Patreon supporters. If you go to Shane Plays or patreon.com/Shane Plays, and that's where people actually support the show for as little as $1 per show. Now, what I'm trying to do here is something unique. That is Geek Talk Radio. I don't know anybody else out there doing it. Maybe they are. There's plenty of podcasts, and there's nothing wrong with a podcast. I love podcasting. Okay? In fact, this show goes out after a podcast. But Zach, do most podcasts have all this going on that we're sitting here doing in this radio studio? Now, this is a whole different level. We're broadcasting to a metro area of 700,000 people. that, we can take callers. We have guests of high caliber. We've had Ed Greenwood of Forgotten Realms. We've had Chris Avalone, who's a incredibly well-known game designer. We've had Chris Perkins from D&D. We've had I'm not trying to slide any of our guests. We've had great guests, and we're continuing to have great guests. And it's interactive. People can call in, and it also goes out on a podcast. So what I'm saying is, if you like what you're hearing, if this is unique, and you're not getting it anywhere else, and I don't usually spend a lot of time on Patreon. There's a couple of commercials that run during the show. Other than that, I don't mention it a whole lot. But if you like what you're hearing, and you think it's unique, and you like the idea of geek talk, terrestrial geek talk radio, because let's be honest, most talk radio is politics or sports or finances. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But if you like something a little different, would you consider maybe supporting the show through patreon.com? This is an experiment. I'm trying to support the show through both sponsors and let the community decide if they want it or not. Now, don't take that as the show's about to go away. I want to be very clear, but I don't talk about Patreon a lot, but that is something I'd like to have a balance between sponsors and Patreon supporters, because the less time I have to chase sponsors, the more time I can put into recruiting guests and preparing for the show. That being said, you don't ever have to pay to listen to this show. I want to be absolutely clear. And whether you pay to listen to the show through Patreon or whether you're a sponsor, or I don't care. I'm glad you're here. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on that. Now, moving forward, and I don't do, Zach, how often do I ever bring that up?
Not much.
Never, hardly ever. I just wanted to throw that out there since we weren't having a news segment today and had a little extra time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to the segment, and then I'm gonna ponder. I may rant a little bit here. I may not. But if you have input about what I'm about to talk about, you can hit me up at 501-823-0965, or you could tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. But I'm going to talk here about a topic that came up this week for role-playing games. And Monte Cook, who's well known in the role-playing design world, has been involved with D&D and others. He has a game now, or a company called Monte Cook Games, and they put out a very cool game called Numenera. We've had Shauna Germain from Numenera on before, and we had Chris Avalone talking about the Torment Tides of Numenera game. But anyway, it's a very cool system. The company's doing some really impressive stuff. And they also have, it's called the Cipher system, and Numenera, and also a game called The Strange by Bruce Cordell use it. And I assume they'll use it with other games as well. But the point is, he put out an article talking about one of the game mechanics of the Cipher system and why they went that way. Now, let me be very clear. What I'm about to talk about here, I'm not down on Monte Cook. I'm not down on Numenera. I'm not down on the Cipher system. I'm not down on Monte Cook Games. I think it's a very cool system. And the game mechanic itself that I'm about to talk about, I think is an interesting mechanic. I'm not against the mechanic. What I'm going to talk about is the reasoning for the mechanic and whether we need it or not. Because honestly, I was like, seriously, is this even a thing? So he posted an article on the Monte Cook Games website. It's called under I guess he has a Monte Says series of articles, and it's linked on shaneplays.com on the show notes. But he says a 1, as in a numeral 1, is not a fumble. Now, for the uninitiated, if you're playing most role-playing games, especially D&D and those of its ilk, I love to say ilk. I look for, Zach, any opportunity I could say ilk. So those of its ilk, use D20s. That's a 20-sided dice. And whether it's a house rule or built into the games, almost every gaming group treats, if you roll a natural 20, like you're trying to hit somebody, or you're trying to do something, you're trying to climb a cliff, or you're trying to whatever, or you're trying to survive a tough situation. If you roll the 20-sided dice and you roll a natural 20, it's considered an automatic success. And not only an automatic success, but a really good success. So more success than normal would happen. And it's called a crit. You've critted, right? Critical hit. So on the inverse of that, we have what's called fumbles. And this has been around forever. If you roll a 1, no matter what, you missed. And something bad happened. You dropped your sword. You tripped. You were trying to convince somebody of something, and not only did you not convince them, but you angered them. You were trying to speak another language, and you insulted their mom's tomatoes, whatever, right? So this has been around forever. And a lot of the most gamers, in fact, there's been some discussion of this online and in a Facebook group and other stuff. Almost every gamer, we love fumbles. It's part of the game. Some of the best memories in gaming come from fumbles and crits, because you're like, oh, it's like it's just a moment that everyone's like, oh no, what's going to happen next, and people kind of joke around and it'll kind of oh, your character, how could you do that? So it's always been a lot of fun. Now Monte changed in the Cypher system, which is not D&D. This is the Monte Cook Games way of doing role-playing games. They now have things called GM intrusions, where if you roll a 1, then the GM will step in and narratively make things more complicated, right? So instead of the character goofed up and dropped their sword or said the wrong thing, maybe another enemy shows up, or maybe a cave-in starts happening or something like that. So it's not that the character itself messed up. There's just a complication that happens story-wise. Now, as justification, let me read this. It's a funny moment, and we've all been there, but it also has some negative connotations. He's talking about fumbles when you roll a 1. And the example he gives is Bruce rolls a 1. Everyone at the table laughs, and someone says, I think you just called his mother something obscene, Bruce. More laughter. So Monte says it's a funny moment, and we've all been there, but it also has some negative connotations. Bruce, the player, not the character, remember, didn't do anything wrong. Rolling a 1 isn't his fault per se. The die just does that on its own. About 1 in 20 times, actually. But if the GM or the DM actually incorporates some version of the joke into the actual narrative of the game, that is to say that Bruce's character said something foolish or untoward, Bruce himself, the player, feels bad. He feels bad. This rubs me wrong. Again, I'm not against the game mechanic. I'm against the justification for it. If you're playing a game and let's take this to video games. If you're playing a game and your character, does something wrong, do you personally feel bad? No, I don't. This is, and so it goes on to say, he says, this is important because we don't want to run games that quote unquote punish players for rolling bad. A GM intrusion isn't meant to be punishment. He's justifying, instead of saying that the character itself did something stupid, that the narrative of the story changed and things got more complicated. Well, if you don't want to run games that punish players for rolling bad, why would you reward them for rolling well? Let that sink in for a second. Why can we not take the good with the bad? I cannot ever think one time, and I've been playing games for, 30-something years. I can never remember one time that because of the way I rolled and it caused my character to either succeed or fail, that I personally felt bad and my self-esteem was hurt. I don't get this. I do not get this. And it ties into this whole self-esteem movement out there where everyone gets a trophy for showing up, right? Well, if nothing bad ever happens, or if you don't have any chance to fail, where's the sense in succeeding? Well, how does it feel good to succeed? I just don't get this. He goes on to say, in fact, a certain type of player, motivated by embarrassment or guilt, might feel obligated to always spend XP to re-roll a 1 every time for this reason. Now, he's talking about something specific there for the Cypher system, where I guess you can spend experience points that your characters have earned to re-roll dice. So he's saying that you feel so embarrassed that your character rolled a bad that it's going to affect your personal feelings, and that's going to affect how you play the game. I do not. Now, the game mechanic itself is fine if you want to do exciting storytelling, and if you want to hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. I had to pass a note to Zach. If you want to have exciting storytelling, and if you want to have a mechanic where a 1 is not a fumble, but it lets the dungeon master or the game master narratively, like say you're playing Indiana Jones and you got 3 people chasing you and you roll a 1 and suddenly 8 more people jump in. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a cool mechanic, but I completely disagree with the need for it. Totally. And if I sound a little annoyed, it's because I am. I mean, what is this? So we can't even have a game where we roll a 1 because somebody might feel bad? This, and maybe, you know, there's this thing called a grognard where older gamers who used to, you know, live and die by dice rolls, you could die real easy in games. You know, I'm considered a grognard. Maybe it's just my inner grognard, but if we are so sensitive as a society that we can't even play a game where we roll a 1 or we quote unquote feel bad, we got problems. I mean, because we want to feel good when we roll well. So why is it not why can we not have critical hits, but at the same, on the inverse, not have critical fumbles? I don't get that. There's no easy answer here. If people, you know, somebody said, well, if you played this game, how would you do it? I said, well, I would go by the rules because those are the rules that have been developed for the game. And I don't have a problem with the mechanic itself. But since Monte Cook chose in his article to say, not only here's the mechanic, but here's why, and he editorialized on the need for his mechanic, I'm going to editorialize right back and say, people, if you need this, you're a weenie. If the reason you need this mechanic is because you feel bad, you are not going to do well in life. That's all I got to say. Now, that being said, I'm not against Monte Cook games. I've enjoyed talking with Shauna Germain. I've got the rules for Numenera. I think it's a great system. But to say that we have to not have fumbles because the person, not the character, but the person playing the character, self-esteem might get hurt, I got big problems with that. I got real big problems with that. So, you know, there's no right or wrong answer here. Some people out there listening might agree with me. Some might disagree with me. You know, if you can always tweet me at Shaneplays, ShanePlays. You can call anytime during the show today, and I'll let you comment at 501-823-0965. But those are my thoughts on the matter. Again, I'm not against the mechanic. I'm against the editorializing of why the mechanic is needed. I think it speaks to a larger cultural issue. Because games do reflect culture, how we play games, what kind of games we want. And I personally am worried about anybody who is personally, their self-esteem is going to be hurt because they rolled a 1 and their character did something dumb. I got big problems with that. That being said, I would love to play Numenera or The Strange. That's not the point. It's the need for the rule, the justification for the rule that bugs me. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have Gene Leggett from One More Story Games talking about their StoryStylus, their interactive storytelling engine, and they have a big author announcement related to this. So when we come back on Shane Plays Radio, a journey into the things we love.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit Megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. Where else can you hear in the same few minutes somebody wish their wife happy anniversary and then rant about a game mechanic in role-playing games? Where else? Only here, people. Only here. That's the chuckling there that you're hearing is Jean Leggett of the COO of One More Story Games, and the rest of the show we'll be talking with her. Jean, thanks so much for joining us. How's things? Are you back in Canada now?
We are an hour north of Toronto. We're in like the snow belt.
Yeah.
And we are enjoying some nice above freezing weather. And I've actually got Blair in the room because I was listening to your rant, Shane, and I was thinking we definitely need to have Blair on the conversation because he's a huge role player. He's a Call of Cthulhu kind of guy and everything else, like old school D&D.
Way back.
Yeah.
Way back.
Thinking as you would figure out your year's number in the 30s, I'm approaching the 40s there. That's pretty scary, Shane.
It is. I think I rolled my first dice in like 82 in the D&D basic and expert rules. No, you know what? I played Traveler first. Traveler was the very first RPG I ever played.
Wow.
Yeah.
Started with Traveler. That's impressive.
Yeah. What about you?
I got the blue box set. So that was before the basic and expert sets back in, I think, 77, 78.
Yeah, you were playing what's now known as OD&D, original D&D.
That's right.
Yeah, cool.
That's right.
Yeah, you're a grognard like me, man. I salute because you're even more of a grognard than I am. I salute you, sir.
Well, I mean, I like rolling the dice, but my brother was a huge Avalon Hill fan, and he had all the war games. So that was the hexagon systems were my life. But anyways, yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, cool. It was good to talk to you. Did you? And I don't want to spend too much time on it. I really want to let us talk about One More Story Games. But did you hear the rant? And did you have a quick opinion on it? And if you disagree with me, that's fine.
Myself, I have only actually played a couple of times. When I first met Blair, I created my own little character, Dee Dubois, and it was for a Call of Cthulhu campaign. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being able to create my own character and play. I definitely have a whole long rant of my own about how we're not really teaching people resilience if we're doing nice things all the time. Not to say that we need to be mean, but life is unfair, and sometimes you're going to roll dice, and it's going to be unfair too, so suck it up.
Right. That's kind of, like I said, I'm not against the mechanic. I'm against the editorializing of why they did the mechanic. Every game is going to have its unique set of rules. So what about you, Blair? Did you have an opinion on does fumbling, does it hurt?
Something like a mechanic. Sorry, go ahead, Chase.
I was saying, if you roll a 1 and fumble in a game, does that hurt your self-esteem?
For me, I do less in terms of die rolling. I prefer a mechanic in something, say, like Deadwood, or I think was the first one to really get it going, where you rewarded good role-playing.
Right.
Or when you could capture the essence of your character. And sometimes that didn't always work well for you, but when you played your character to a T and maybe did something stupid there...
did it ever hurt your feelings, though?
It didn't hurt my feelings, and usually I didn't give much in the way of rewards when I did DMing or game mastering to die rolls. I'd rather do it for what people choose to do as opposed to the capriciousness of the dice.
Oh, and that's fair enough. I mean, totally. Like I said, every game has its own unique set of rules in an engine, if you will. Like I said, what I was narrowing in on is like the fumble concept in role-playing games has been around forever. And now suddenly they're saying, well, it might hurt somebody's feelings. And I'm like, I just disagree. Like, okay, so you played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, right? Like
Call of Cthulhu, yeah, sure.
Okay, so if your character failed a sanity check and took a look at Cthulhu, failed a sanity check, swallowed a grenade, and jumped off a skyscraper because he failed his sanity check, do you personally feel bad? Does your self-esteem hurt? That's my point. That's my point.
But that should be very rare.
Right.
Right? I mean, there are the monsters in the Call of Cthulhu system that literally have the D100 sanity loss, but they're rare, and that should only be at the climax of a game. And truthfully, again, I think it comes down to the choice of the player. If you know that you're possibly staring at one of these big, bad old ones, great old ones, and you look at it, you deserve the sanity loss you're about to get.
Okay, so that's fair enough. I mean, it definitely sounds like Blair lands on the narrative side of role playing, which is absolutely fine. And you know,
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I was trying to think as a contrast to your rant. When would you have seen, say, like a James Bond movie where James Bond truly had a fumble? And I was just trying to think of, you know, that moment where like a superhero character has that moment of where, whoops,
right,
and they mess up. And I mean, the thing is, I think if you're like a level 20, level 30 character, that should be fewer and far between. But if it's a D20 dice,
yeah, it's going to happen 1 in 5. Well, which is fine, and in that case, then you take away the critical hit too, because if you're not going to reward rolling a natural 20, or if you're not going to take rolling a natural 1 as bad, that's fine. Just take away rewarding really good rolls too. If you're just going to base it on the character's choices and stuff like that. But even like James Bond, his gun can jam, or he can run out of ammo. Or like I remember Spider-Man, every now and then, like he's swinging through the city and whatever his web was attached to wasn't strong enough to support the web, so it snapped off. So stuff like that can happen. But here's the thing: I don't want to. I love this conversation, but I want to make sure to talk about One More Story games. So what I like to do is kind of segue here on because we're talking about choice, and you guys have a storytelling engine that allows people to develop interactive stories, like kind of like choose your own adventure books, to allow people to write interactive fiction that allows the reader to have choices. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I think that's pretty bang on. And we've spent the last 2.5 years bootstrapping to build this. Really borrowed a lot from Blair's background in RPGs, and he's worked for 2 of the largest game companies in the world. Well, at their time, I think there's other people that are sort of coming down the pike, but he's worked at EA and he worked at Zynga. So he saw a lot of emphasis on creating gameplay, but more so from lately the perspective of creating these shiny slot machines where storytelling isn't the focus. So what we've done is we've created StoryStylus, that's our engine, and writers, which is really our primary target audience for content creators. Writers can take the elements of stories, so your people, your places, your conversations, items, locations, like the basic building blocks, enter them into our software, and with a little bit of what's called scripting, and we're trying to make it 10-year-olds have mastered how to do it, so I'm confident.
Say that again. I think that's an incredibly important point. Say that again, just what you just said.
People get all freaked out, and we did summer camps this year, and we said to the kids on the Friday, what would you tell the next batch of kids first thing Monday morning? And they said, it looks scary, it's really easy, take a deep breath.
That's good software then. Software that's easy to use. Yeah.
Well, you think about it this way. I mean, a lot of people have used Microsoft Word, but they might not know how to use all the bells and whistles. You can still create a really short, interactive story game with basic knowledge, but if you want to create something that rivals, the Tex Murphy, the Gabriel Knights, the Mists, you need to know a little bit more advanced logic, and that's all we're really asking from writers is think about the logic in your story. So going back to the Choose Your Own Adventures, it's like, for example, there are a lot of different kinds of game worlds that you can create. When you read a traditional book, it's a very linear narrative. With our engine, you could create a linear story game, or you could create something that's a sandbox world. Or a lot of people who are playing the Telltale games, it's kind of like that. You have a couple of choices, but the end, you're always driven towards the same ending, which is called railroading.
Right.
We really want to give authors the opportunity to create anything they want. If they want to have 42 different endings and 31 different choice points, they have that opportunity. And so we're really excited. We've been working on the engine for 2 years, and it's finally ready for people to come and use it and create. We do have some game content out there.
So to tie it, okay, so first of all, I want to make sure people know that we're talking, it's One More Story games, and you have a storytelling interactive storytelling engine, if you will, called StoryStylus. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So using StoryStylus, and I'm going to use Choose Your Own Adventure as a reference point because a lot of people know that. Understanding.
I think it's the perfect reference to me.
Yeah, understanding that it sounds like you can do more than what a traditional Choose Your Own Adventure book would allow you to do. You can write a story that's interactive, and the reader, through their choices, drives the story and where it goes. So
absolutely.
All right. So to take that to a lot of computer role playing games, one of the challenges that authors and developers for those will tell you is you have to have branching dialogue and branching options, and so what if they go this way and what if they go that way, and so this software in an easy manner allows you to tackle all that.
Yeah, and one of the components that Blair built into this is something called dark maps. The idea being that when you start off in, say, like a haunted house or, an insane asylum, dungeon, that you are in a room and maybe there's 4 doors and you ask your party to choose which door you're going to go through, you're not going to know what's going to happen to you. So you could actually, as a DM, create in advance your dark map and have your party go through that with you in live time. And things can happen, Shoggoths can appear and big ugly beasties.
Right.
You could scan in all of your game maps for a session ahead of time and then virtually or digitally explore that world together. So it can be used as a game. It can be used for a utility for other game sessions.
So yeah, if you want to do remote RPG playing, then off you go.
Okay, but just to give an idea of what StoryStylus does and does not do, any dice rolling or any of that would be handled outside of the software, right? I mean, this is more of a...
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Just trying to, make sure people to set, the correct understanding of what the software is. Now,
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's say that there's a new book out called, Shane Likes to Rant about RPG mechanics. And so let's say that in that, people are like, hey, I want to read that for whatever reason. I don't know why they would. They need to go to their psychologist to do. But just for the sake of argument, let's say they want to read that book. When I'm reading that book that's been written in StoryStylus, how am I reading it? Am I reading it via a piece of software on my computer? Am I reading it as an app on my phone? Am I reading it on my Kindle? I mean, how is it delivered?
Right now, it's all of our game content is being delivered via our website, via our link on Facebook, so you can actually play within Facebook. And currently, it's available for Android tablets. It can be played on an Android phone, but I personally find the text is too small. It looks really great on a tablet.
Okay.
And we'll be moving into Mac development in the coming months.
Okay. So, and if I understand right, there's an alpha version that people can test right now. I don't want to misspeak. Is that correct?
Actually, we're now in beta. We just came out of alpha a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And we're getting more authors in there. We've got somebody who's doing a really cool, sort of like a Dante's Inferno with a little bit of slapstick comedy in there. We've got some people doing some cyberpunk thrillers, which one's coming out next week or the week after. We've got some sci-fi. We've got some mystery. We really want to, you've got a lot of game sites out there that are publishing various kinds of games, and we want to curate great content and great storytelling. We're not looking for Flappy Bird games. We're looking for this hybrid between an ebook meets computer game. And it really sort of is a throwback to those classic Infocom games, and it's about the story. What we have found, people who've come to play our games, is, listen, they don't need the 3D immersive world where they're walking around, because it's not about the graphics necessarily, it's about the story, and that's really why we have focused the whole thing on writers. I see Blair wants to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
The whole process is, though, that you create your content in StoryStylus, like a word processor, and then you can either choose to publish that out to these different platforms, or if you want, you can just share with your friends, and then your friends can come and play online and experience your content that way.
Thank you for bringing that. I just want to add to that, Shane. When Blair says publish, we are de facto digital publishers, and so for the content that we find is really fantastic, we then return royalties back to the writers. And that's what we're doing with our big author that's coming up.
Yeah, and I want to we're gonna wait till after the break on that. I want to tease that a little bit. After the next break, where there's it really is. I mean, it's a big author, and I'm very excited for you to be able to work with this person. I'm not even going to reveal the gender. You're just going to have to wait till after the break, people. But I will just say that this author is true. And like me, she has Southern blood, and I'll just leave it at that, and then we'll tease it more after, or we'll reveal after the break. But I wanted to ask, when it comes to publishing, are you a gatekeeper? I mean, is there going to be like two channels, like where some stuff is curated through One More Story Games, like what makes it to your publishing end, and will there be another channel where I can just make anything I want for my friends to play with, but it may not show up like on your store or something like that? I hope I'm asking that well.
That's exactly it. Two different channels.
Okay.
There's the channel for the unpublished content that's shareable, and then there's the essentially the marketplace where all of the transactions happen. And you know what's interesting with self-publishing has really changed in the last 10 years, and they have these things called book trailers, so they've got like a 30-minute film spot for a book, but it's not driving traffic to the author's book. So we want to encourage authors to even just do like a 5-minute story game where it's a prelude to their novel. We've been talking to some interesting studios in California about using our engine where they provide us all of the art content. These are well-known properties, and all of a sudden their fans of those properties can actually write fan fiction games.
Okay, well, that's
so
cool.
Imagine taking your favorite TV show or your favorite film or your favorite graphic novel, and all of a sudden you get to create the content.
Okay, so that's super cool. So, all right, let's say that I have this great idea for an interactive, story, and let's say that I get StoryStylus and write it. Do I then like submit it to you and say, hey, would you please look at this? And then you decide if you want to publish it or not? Or do y'all just automatically review what's being made with the game or with the software? I mean, how does that work?
Well, definitely you would be submitting it to us, and we're just in the process of finalizing how that submission process works. Typically, we would want at least 5 or 10 of your own friends to have played the game and given some feedback on the game, because if we were to review, the hundreds and thousands of submissions that we anticipate in the next 6 to 12 months, we would never have time to improve the engine or work with the big authors that we're working with. So, the idea being that you've created something, your friends have taken a look at it, and they've given you feedback, and hopefully you've implemented their feedback, and then it'll go through the submission process.
Okay, so last question before the break. How does StoryStylus work? Are you giving the software? Are you allowing anybody to use the software for free? And then, you're charging to sell some of the games, or do I need to, once you come out of beta and you're in full on, public mode with the software, is the software going to have a cost?
It definitely will have a cost. We sort of fluctuate because we've seen other game publishing sites where they're charging a lot of money, and then we think, oh, maybe we should be less generous. But the whole point is we want people to create story content. You can go and try StoryStylus free for 3 months. We've just revamped the One More Story Games website, so we've taken all the StoryStylus stuff down because StoryStylus is getting its own new website in the next week or two.
Okay.
So definitely they can find us on Facebook and on Twitter and all of that. The idea being that, though, you can have a subscription to StoryStylus for as little as $20 Canadian per year, which works out to about $15 US per year with the exchange rate.
Okay, great.
Or, as we sometimes say, $2 American, because our exchange rate has been really, really awful.
Has it? Oh, no. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to hit a break. When we come back, I want to move into, your exciting announcement about a really well-known New York Times bestselling author that you're working with that you just announced. So I want to talk about that and leave a little time for that. Folks, before we cut to a break, I'm going to give a little love to one of my sponsors, Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store, not story, I'm thinking about StoryStylus, their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
MegaWars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit MegaWars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. MegaWars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Troll Games. Visit your friendly local game store or trolllord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or trolllord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. We're joined by Gene Leggett and Blair, and we're talking about StoryStylus and One More Story Games, their interactive storytelling engine, which is software that lets you tell interactive stories, kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure books, but better. Exactly like them, but completely different. So, we're in our last segment. The time always goes so fast. I remember, Gene, you and I were talking. You're like, "Hey, what topics do you want to talk about?" I was like, "Man, time will go quick, so let's try to stick to one or two." So, what I want to do with these, the next few minutes that we have roughly 5-6 minutes left. Before I forget, I want you to tell people, what are the best ways to find you and get the software. And then after that, I want to give some time to talk about your big author announcement.
Great. Well, they can find us online at onemorestorygames.com, and if you spell it OME or the numeral 1, you'll end up in the same place. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/OME Story Games, OMEMORE Story Games. And we're just all over social media. We're on YouTube. You can see some of our playthroughs for our engine. Our tutorial videos are on YouTube. So you can start to see that it's not the scary beast. You are making an interactive story game, which we keep using that phrase because people think, oh, it's a video game. It's got, it's like a platformer like Mario. It's not. It really is very focused on the narrative, which is why we use
you mentioned Infocom games like, the classic like Zork and that sort of thing. So, I mean, could you make something on the level of Zork with this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's pretty impressive. So,
graphical Zork.
Graphical Zork. Okay. Very cool. So, all right. And you mentioned, Gene, before the break that eventually it will be a for-pay product, but people can use it for 3 months and check it out first. Was that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we're toying around with the idea of, how many free games do we let people just sort of leave in the hopper? Because essentially what you're doing is you're paying for our data space.
Right.
We're still very much a startup, and we don't have the Silicon Valley backing yet. But so we're mindful.
It's Silicon Valley's loss. Totally their loss. So, all right. Well, hey, and if you don't mind me asking real quick, and if you don't want to share these details, that's fine. But as a computer guy, I've got a lot of development background. Is this written in C++, C#? What language did you go with? And are you using something like Amazon S3 for your data storage? If you feel comfortable sharing those details.
Sure, we can speak to that. When we were trying to build our minimum viable product in tech speak, we went with building the engine in Silverlight, which is not optimal now. We're working on advancing that into HTML5, and right now all of the games publish into Flash, which again is also looking to upgrade into HTML5. But we did what we needed to do because we used programming students from the local college. And when you get in there to see the engine, you'll see that it's quite intricate. And when you're training these new programmers, you really need to find quick and dirty solutions to prove your proof of concept, which I think we've done quite well. Okay,
well, cool. It's not, there's no right or wrong technology. It's whatever works and delivers a good experience to the user. So, but anyway, okay. So to make sure, tell us about the exciting partnership that you just announced for a major author using your software.
We are really super excited to be announcing a novel that is actually set in Arkansas, which is kind of cool.
Arkansas.
Yeah. So your Arkansasian listeners, your Little Rock listeners,
we prefer Arkanoids. Thank you very much. I'm just joking.
Arkanoids.
I'm just joking. I have no idea.
So, number one New York Times bestseller, Charlene Harris.
Yay!
She is most well known. Yeah, right? She's most well known for her Sippy Stackhouse novels, which, in totality, she's sold over like 36 million novels.
She's a major author. Major author.
That's just, major author. And here she is working with this indie game studio. And really it has a lot to do with us saying to her, listen, our philosophy is we want to take people behind the scenes of how we adapt your novel and turn that into an interactive game, because we want other authors to understand it's really simple. The games industry is so huge. There's a huge opportunity for storytellers, not just, the programmers and the artists. I respect them completely, but what's missing is storytelling. So
right. Well, if there's not good stories, the stuff that people are going to make with StoryStylus is going to rise or fall on the storytelling, because the novelty of using I can click here and go here, like Choose Your Own Adventure books. If they weren't on some level a compelling story, they wouldn't have kept going. The novelty would have worn off. So we enjoy having the 10 and 12-year-olds in our camps, but are they strong storytellers yet? That remains to be seen. So it's not just that you know how to use the technology. You really need to know how to focus on story. And there's a craft
and
there.
Characters. Yeah. So we're adapting the novel called Shakespeare's Landlord, which is set in the fictional town of Shakespeare, Arkansas. And if people want to follow along and learn a little bit more about that particular project, they can go to lilybard.com, which is LILYBARD.com. bard.com. And yeah, they can get exclusive behind the scenes. They could eventually become one of the early testers. We're looking to create a collaborative community around building this project, where the features that we have coming down the road for StoryStylus include collaboratively working with other people, like your musicians and your graphic designers. We're building all of these components in, and even for RPGs, it would almost take a whole other half hour to really show you why this is such an exciting thing and an exciting time too to be a storyteller in games.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, folks, you can always go to shaneplays.com, and there's links to all this stuff. Time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. We always run out of time before we can get into everything that we could possibly talk about. But Gene and Blair, thanks so much for being on. Remember, folks, that's One More Story Games and their interactive storytelling engine, StoryStylus, and they're partnered up with Charlene Harris, who's a major New York Times bestselling author, and they're adapting one of her novels into a StoryStylus game. So I wish you nothing but success with this. I think it's great. Thanks so much for being on. Please, folks, please go check them out, because this is really cool stuff. Gene and Blair, thanks so much. I hope you all have a great day, and thanks again for coming on.
Thanks very much for having us, Shane.
Yeah, you're welcome. And maybe we'll have you on again, down the road and see how things are going. Listen, folks, got to wrap up. Remember, you can always catch us a week delayed on KryptonRadio.com. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. The tweet of the week is from Ed Greenwood. He said, "You can accomplish all things through love, kindness, understanding, and a great big stick." Next week, Joe and Hannah Williams of Well Not Studios join us again to talk about their Serpents in the Staglands expansion and their new game Copper Dreams. I'm out. Shane Plays Radio.